Well, hey, everybody, glad to be back with you again. And our topic today is planning for the long term success of your business. And, David, this is something that is extremely important, but I think that especially when people are starting out or just kind of, maybe they've kind of hit a plateau, this is probably where they haven't really done the work. Would you agree?
Yes. I mean, a lot of people, when they start out their business, like, hey, someone will pay me to do this.
Yeah.
Like, okay, hey, someone else will pay me to do that too. And next thing you know, they kind of have a business going because
Right.
they've had a couple people recognize that they have a talent in a certain area. They have a gift for something. And like, all right, people keep hiring me to do this stuff. So I guess I
Right.
kind of have a business doing it now. And it doesn't really put a lot of structure or planning or there's no long-term plan. You're
Right.
just
Not
kind
a,
of
not a
reacting,
consistency, right?
right? You're just kind of reacting to what's happening rather than actually saying, hey, I'm actually intentionally building my business.
Yeah.
I'm going to intentionally set this up in such a way so that I can succeed and really have a plan so that this business can even one day take care of me.
Well, don't you think too that this is a really it could happen to any business, but it specifically happens to like solopreneur type businesses, like
Right.
coaches, course creators, speakers, trainers, because you can't like I couldn't open up a hardware store with that approach, right? Like that
Right.
just wouldn't work well. There's storefronts type businesses that we're not talking about primarily, right? They have to do this, and especially
Well,
I
there's
talked
a
a
lot
lot.
of capital outlay for them.
Right, and they have to go to banks to get loans or investors of some kind many times to get loans to get started. And so they have to think about the structure, they have to think about that, but to your point, it's so easy to start a business as a
Mhm.
coach, as a trainer, as a speaker, as a, course creator today, which is great, but most people that are doing that haven't gone to business school or haven't really sat down to really plan. They've maybe been an employee in a company and in a business, but they haven't been the they didn't create it. They didn't set up those systems and the structures and the processes that we're going to talk about today that are so important. And so, tell us about your journey because I mean, you moved from the financial industry and banking into entrepreneurship, and so you had more of a understanding of a lot of this because you were on that side of it. For myself, I was a pastor for 20 some years and I didn't have a business bone in my body in a lot of ways. I've had to learn as I've gone, and I'm still learning every day. And I'm realizing more and more how important this topic is. So I want to kind of toss it your way because this is something you think about very strategically and intentionally.
So you're saying that you have talent in multiple lanes, and I just kind of know how to do one thing? Is that
That's
kind of
that's not what I'm saying.
that's kind of? I'm sitting there going, yeah, that's bad.
You're the structure guy that you think about systems and
I'm kind of the
processes.
guy who knows a lot about two things. Just don't ask
Hey,
me
you
questions outside of that.
Well, but you're a specialist then in that case, right?
Yeah,
Whereas I can get in trouble
yeah,
because I can get distracted or go too wide and
right.
too shallow. So
I'm just joking around. I'm
this is
just like,
about building, but this is about building a really a foundation for a long term success.
right. Well, here's the thing. We all know, and like Chris was saying, is like when you're putting out a physical store, you have to put some planning to it. You have to put some thought process to it because you're spending a lot of money, especially if you have that physical space. Like I
Hmm.
have a friend of mine that has, like I've talked to, has a sports memorabilia and card store.
Hmm.
He put out some money to put all the infrastructure, all the display cases, all the stuff, the lighting, and hardwood floors, and he dropped some money to build that
Yeah,
store because he had a lot of capital expenditures that had to go into it, and he made it nice. He did a really nice job. Well, that requires you to get disciplined, right?
yeah,
And you're exactly right. When we are authors, coaches, speakers, trainers who just want to start making some money from our knowledge and expertise, we tend to just kind of roll.
yeah,
We don't necessarily have that. And I think this really leads to a lot of what happens, which is, within the first year, 20% of businesses tend to fail. Within year two, 30%. By year five, 50% have failed.
yeah,
And a real lot of it is there's not a good plan in place.
yeah.
And a lot of the reasons are, cash flow problems. In other words, you don't have the money coming in like you need to. Like
Hmm.
if you're not making enough money to sustain it, well, obviously, if it's more of an expense than it is an income producer,
Right.
that's going to cause it to quit. Being poorly managed, if it's just not, we see this all the time too. You and I have both experienced this, is that if a company is really poorly managed, things decline.
Right.
We've all seen this. We've seen it ourselves. We've gone to businesses where we go to a restaurant and, oh, this was always such a great restaurant. And now the management changed and it's just very poorly managed and the food doesn't taste very good anymore and the service is terrible. And guess what happens? Boop. Next thing you know, all the customers leave, the business goes down, and there's a close sign on the door. Ineffective planning, just like, what are you doing? You got to do more than show up every day. You got to actually have some intentionality to this. You got to have a direction that you're driving toward. This is what we're trying to do. We're going to try and improve here. We're going to try and get better here. We're going to become more efficient in these areas. And then the other thing I would say is like marketing mishaps. Like, you put a lot of money, we're going to do a big marketing promotion and it wasn't very well thought out. And you just wasted 10 grand, for example, on a big marketing campaign that generated next to nothing. Because somebody talked you into it. This is going to be great. You're going to get lots of customers, and all you did was get a bill. And that happens. Unfortunately, I have somebody right now that I know that's going through this, who's been spending a lot of money on marketing campaigns with a company that promised him the moon, and
nothing's happening.
Nothing's getting done. And so, how do you avoid this? How do you stay out of this trap? And because you don't want to be one of the, because if you look at it that way, every other business is failed. Well, and I would even argue in the solopreneur space, I would argue that may even be higher, because there's so many people who just lack the things that we're going to talk about today.
Well, and to that point, I think because of what you're saying, people get discouraged. It's harder to shut down. Like when you've invested a lot of capital into like a storefront type business,
right?
It's not that they can't shut down, because obviously they do. But when you're a solopreneur, if you're just starting out and maybe you have a day job still and you're just trying to get going as a coaching business or selling courses, I think the quit rate can be a lot higher, or probably is a lot higher, because if you don't get that traction, people are like, well, it's just not going to work. Right. And so, but what happens, or what doesn't happen, I'll say, is we don't dissect enough our failures to really understand why isn't it working, right? Whether it's that marketing campaign, whether it's my cash flow, whatever it may be, why is that not working, so that we can then correct that. And so I think it's easy when you're in that solo space to quit, because it's really just you. If you have employees or you have investors that you're trying to make a profit for, to help, to give them that return, you're driven more. Even if it's stressful, you're still driven more. Whereas if I just say, you know what, I'm done, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to shut down my website, I'm going to just quit today, as a solopreneur, I think it's just easier in that regard. But that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, but it also means that there's also probably a lot of things that could be fixable.
Right. Well, and when you are putting out a big capital outlay up front, you're having to be more committed. Let's be honest. Like you could easily spend a 6-figure sum to do all the capital expenditures to build a physical location for your store. So that's very easily done. That doesn't take a lot, especially in today's.
And the ramifications of walking away are huge.
Right. And so you have a lot more invested in it. And a little bit of that comes too as well. If you're going to do this, you have to have the vision for your business that's compelling. And some of this is, I see this all the time, and it becomes down to that simple. So why are you doing this in the first place? And if I hear the answer, well, I could make some extra money doing it. Okay. I'm like, it's not a very compelling reason, is it? It's not going to drive you. You need to know, why are you doing this? Because it's going to be a bumpy road. And it just is. And you're going to have those days where you're going to sit there going, what am I doing over here? Because I'm not exactly making a lot of money and it's taking up a lot of time.
Right.
But you have that drive within you to say, no, this is what I really feel led to do. This is what I feel called to do. This is aligned with what I feel like for the purpose of my life. And so you have that vision that's driving you to keep going. And then when you do that, you have to understand that you need to stay in that lane.
Right.
Because what's going to happen is, and this happens to all of us, it happens to me, as I get people reaching out to me, when I first started this journey in the last 3 years, this new journey, I'll call it, the next
The next leg of your journey.
the next leg of the journey. That's a good way of saying it. I was building book funnels for people and doing a lot of that. And I did that for a while until I realized the actual process of going through building the book funnel, doing all, and I thought I could have made a good business out of that.
Yeah.
But I realized this isn't really what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I had to learn. And then I've had people, so I kind of shut that part of it down because I'm like, I'm not going to pursue this anymore. This is really not where I want to be.
Right.
It's not the business that I really wanted. I learned it really didn't fit the vision that I wanted to have for my business. So I shut it down. And since then, I've had people come to me and say, hey, could you build a book funnel for me? And I've had to say no.
Yeah.
And it's very easy because you look at it and go, it's several $1,000s because of the amount of time that it takes to build one. I have to charge that because it's a lot of work. This is not a weekend project. This is like a lot of time invested to do this. And so you have to learn, you have to stay in your lane. And if you don't, if you hop, skip and jump. That's what I'm trying to say. Words sometimes in the mouth.
Words are hard.
The words don't always come out of the mouth the way you intend them to. But if you're all of a sudden jumping around, well, now we're offering this and now we're offering that, your customers are just going to look at you and go, what?
Yeah.
Your customers need to know that you're the X guy. If I need leadership coaching, I go to Chris. If I want to learn these certain skills, I know Chris is an expert in that lane. You have to stay there. Don't just hop to another lane because, well, somebody will pay me to do that. Yeah. Well, someone will pay me to do this, and I guess I could do that too. Well, that just creates a mess because at that point you're chasing the money and not the vision.
Right. And you're right. And I think this is where a lot of, early stage, entrepreneurs struggle, right? Because trying to get that cash flow, trying to get started, and I know I've gone down that path, right? Like it took me a while to kind of meander to realize, I think I've shared the story before where, one of my first clients, it was a great payday, so to speak, right? If I was going to do a year of coaching for this young adult that his parents were like, he needs help to get him moving. And I started coaching him. And within 3 months, I fired him as a client and it hurt to lose the income. But for me, I'm like, I cannot do this for the next 9 months. I didn't want to take his parents' money anymore. And I knew he wasn't invested. So I realized that's not the kind of coaching I need to do. And so it takes a while sometimes to refine that. But at the same time, I think a lot of it is forethought, right? Like what you're saying takes sitting down and really thinking through. And even like you said, like with the book funnel thing, can you do that? Absolutely. You're actually very good at that. But is it what you want to do? Is it something that's going to energize you and build the business you want as an entrepreneur? Those are the questions we have to ask ourselves.
Well, it's the short-term versus long-term decision making.
100%.
The short term is, yes, that'll give me some cash flow and that'll keep me liquid and keep me going. And sometimes you do have to do some of that. I mean, it's just when you're first getting started until you get things built, you have to have that long-term vision, knowing that, okay, I can take on this short-term project to get me some cash, but I have to stay focused on that long-term.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's the business over here, not this over here. This is a way to pay the bills right now. And you have to get that straight in your head. Is what I'm doing paying the bills, or is what I'm doing in line with my vision for my business? And ultimately, you got to stay in your lane. You got to stay over here. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to build my business.
Yeah.
And then from there, once you get that clear and this is the path, this is where I'm going to focus. This is where I'm going to put all my energy. Now you have to have a consistent way of getting customers.
Yeah.
How do this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm good at. This is my lane. This is where I'm going to stay because this is what I really enjoy doing. This is what I'm really good at. And people recognize that. People, come to me because they know, oh, you're good at this. Okay. I'm going to go to you for help because you are good at this. And so now how do you consistently get clients? How do you consistently bring people in? And so this comes down to, how do you generate leads? How are you consistently? And you need to figure out what types of things can you put out there that will attract your clients? What are the types of things that interest them? How do you build an audience of interested people? And then how do you convert some of those into customers? And there's just this process, and every business is, depending on what you're doing, if you're selling courses, if you're selling coaching, if you're selling training, it's a different process.
Right.
It's not the same depending on what you're doing, but you need to figure out like what works and how can I repeat that without like killing myself. Because yes, like we have said this many times too, is like you can go out and you can network to get your first couple clients. That's great. But if you're going to be able to do that long term, you better be a good networker.
Right.
because all of us,
and you need to be in the right networking groups.
Correct. And because after a while you run out of people. And it's like the old Amway thing where you're talking to every relative and friend that you own and trying to talk them into joining your Amway downline.
Right.
And people were like, go away. I don't want to.
Now they don't even like to see you walk in the room.
Right. Because you overworked the people that you had. You didn't have a big enough network. You needed a wide network. So you either have to be really good at the networking game and know how to keep getting into new ponds, so to speak, for fish, or you have to have a system that's going to drive audience traffic to you and to drive people into becoming your customers. And once you have that in place, you start getting that going. Now you need a system in place to take care of your customers.
Yeah.
How are they going to get served well? Are they going to get the results that they want? Are they going to get their questions answered? Are they going to get the support that they need on a consistent basis? You need systems in place. And especially as the business grows, you quickly realize I can't do all this by myself.
Right.
Not if I ever want to sleep again. It's just how it is. You hit that point where the questions, the requests, the support things are coming in faster than you can handle.
Right.
And you're like, okay, I have to get people in here to help me. I need systems, and it's always systems and teams. So you either have to find a system that can automate the process. So like an example is putting an FAQ guide on your website for your clients to go through, which answers all the questions. And if there's some common questions, you can say, hey, here you go. Read through this. So this will answer a lot of these questions. So I don't have to answer the same questions again and again.
Right.
Or you got to bring someone on to help you who can take off some of these tasks and manage them for you and train them and give them what we call SOPs, which are standard operating procedures.
Right.
So they know how to do the job correctly.
Yeah.
They know how to do it up to your standards, and they know how to satisfy your customers so that they get what they need. So they understand that process. So it's all about now building this whole machine and this whole system and this whole process. So you're not just literally just going by a wing and a prayer here of like, oh, hey, we got to get some clients. No, you've actually developed a system to get clients and a system to take care of clients.
Yeah.
And when you have those in place, now you really have a real business.
Yeah.
Now you're at that place where this isn't just, hey, you want to work with me? Like, no, I could work with you. No, now you actually have a process of getting clients, of taking care of clients. You have a clear vision for what you're doing. This business is now real.
Well, it's funny because I actually was just doing some reading, and I heard somebody kind of use the analogy that when you basically invite somebody to, hey, do you want to work with me? Kind of like you just said, and it's very vague and nebulous. Like it's like basically trying to get people to pay you for fog. And whereas if you said, hey, I have this workshop, I have this coaching package, I have this, whatever that gets this result, and it costs X amount of dollars, think about the clarity difference there so that people know that, David can help me with X, Y, and Z for X price. That's a big difference than I think David can help me, but I'm not exactly sure what the process looks like or what I should expect and all that. I just know what it costs. And then it's like, now you're asking people to give you money, trusting you. And this happens to a lot of coaches. It happens to a lot of trainers, that are just not clear. And I know I've been there as well. And it's funny because the longer I've gone, the more I've realized I do have a product suite. I do have a menu of items that are very specific. And then you just have to and then the conversations get easier. I'll say it that way. When you're more clear and you have more of that structure and system in place, it's kind of like walking into a restaurant, right? I mean, if it's fast food, they have a menu board up on the wall. I know that they have these 10 items or these 10 meals or whatever. You don't go into Taco Bell and ask for, filet mignon, right? Like that's not on their menu.
No, they're not
But
going to be good at that either.
right, it's not their thing, right? But that's the but if I think a lot of coaches, a lot of solopreneurs in general, kind of operate this way, and a lot of it, David, I think is just out of innocent ignorance. I'll call it. We just don't know. We don't know. We're
Right.
not thinking like a business person. We're because here you and I have had this conversation. We know authors, coaches, speakers, course creators, trainers. You name the kind of person, and they're really good at the content. They're good at they're experts in their field, but taking that expertise and turning it into a business is not the same thing, right? There's, one is about content creation and sharing, and they can be good at that, but how can they build the structures, the systems, and to have an actual business that's
Right.
sustainable?
Right. Well, and that's if you're going to have a real business.
Yeah.
That's what it takes. Let's just be honest with you. And it's more than just taking on a project once in a while.
Right.
That, to me, is more of a side hustle,
Right.
real business.
Yeah. Yeah. You can freelance and do some projects but if you want to truly have a scalable business that
Right.
is consistent, you have to do what we're talking about today. Dave, I know we've kind of got, another section here that we want to talk about, but before we wrap up today, but okay, let's say somebody's listening and they're going, I get what you're saying, but this sounds very complex. How do I start? Like, where would you even point them, to even get going in this direction?
Build well. I mean, the first thing obviously is you have to find a way to get your customers. Like they how do you locate people who are your target audience, and
Yeah.
how do you bring them in? And again, it depends on the type of business that you're running.
Sure.
Obviously selling courses is going to be different than selling coaching or getting training opportunities. In organizations, those are all different methods.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you got to find and be able to identify where do these people reside.
Yeah.
And if you're even doing training type things, it's going to be a lot more offline stuff,
Mm-hmm.
where you're going to be looking in your communities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, I want to go speak at this business. Or so you're looking for speaking opportunities. You're looking for ways to network in your local community and your different businesses. So that's going to be a lot of offline stuff. The online stuff for coaching or course sales is going to be, you need to find communities. That could be Facebook groups. That could be leaders. People have big Facebook pages with like millions of people who follow them.
Yeah.
Because those people have attracted an audience, and you're going to look at them and go, yeah, the people who are here are really
my kind of people.
Right. They're my kind of people. They're the kind of people that would be interested in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like they're people who are entrepreneurial in nature. So if I have a business helping coaches, course creators, and trainers start a business around their message. I want to go to the entrepreneurial groups. I want to find entrepreneurial things. And then you want to put out content. You want to put out resources. So what you want to do is you want to put out different videos. You want to put out different things, like offering them to watch a free training. And you want to put out a thing to have them, opt in to watch this free training. Put your name and email in, and you can watch a training about this thing.
Right.
Or you want to offer an ebook. You want to offer some free things out there. So what you're doing essentially, I always look at this, I feel like I learned all I needed to learn about marketing from fishing as a kid. I mean, that sounds so simple.
Yeah.
But how do you catch a fish? Well, first of all, you got to find the pond.
Yep.
Where the right kind of fish are that you're looking to catch. Like if you're looking to catch catfish, you got to go to a pond that has catfish.
Right.
Or bullheads or bass or whatever. Or, we used to go crappie fishing in lakes around where I was at. But you have to know where those fish are. So you got to know that first and foremost. Second thing is you have to put out bait that's going to interest them. So you got to put out things to try and attract them. So what can you create? Like for course sales, it's very popular to put out a really interesting training that would be really appealing to them. Hey, I put out a training that'll show you how to do X, Y, and Z. And it's very appealing to the people who are in that space. I go, wow, I'd love to learn how to do that. Okay, sure. I'll put my name and email address in for the chance to be able to watch that.
Right.
Because that would be helpful to me. Or a guide or an ebook or something that would really be useful to them. So you're putting bait on the hook and you're casting it, trying to get some nibbles, so to speak. And then what you're doing at the end of that is you're offering them chance to work with you.
Yeah.
You're going to put this out there. So if you're doing a training, at the end of the training, you can offer them like, hey, here's because what you're doing in the training is you're giving them the first 2 or 3 steps.
Yeah. And a high level view of
And
what
a
they
high
can
level
do.
view.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you can't, if you're solving a problem that's more complex than, for say, tying your shoes, if it's that simple of a problem, sure, you can cover that in a few minutes. But if it's a bigger problem, which is why we create coaching services or course programs, because we're solving higher level, more complex problems, then we give them the first few steps, help them to see the vision of how this is possible.
Right.
That's one of the important steps is like, as you're doing this, they need to go, whoa, wait a minute. I see it now.
Yeah.
I get it. This is how you can do this. I understand it.
Yeah.
And your course, your coaching shows me exactly how to do it. Yes. If you want to do it, here's how. I have a program for it. I have a course for it.
Yeah.
Here's how you can sign up and engage, and we'll work with you and show you exactly how to succeed in this area of your life. And so that's how you're doing it. You're putting out the bait. And then, like I said, you like when I used to go fishing for bass, I would cast and cast and cast. Nothing. All of a sudden, bam, got one.
Right.
And it's the same thing with your marketing. You're going to put out and you're going to have people watch your videos. You're going to have people engage with your ebooks, download it. Nothing. Yes, got one. Okay. And it's the same approach. And so they're going to come in and they're going to then a small percentage of them. And so I look at it as if you can get, this is a very simple math for selling a course. So let's say you have a course that's a pretty solid course and it sells for $1,000, and you create a training that people can watch that helps them with some of those various things like we talked about. And then at the end, you offer them the opportunity to purchase your course, which shows them in detail how to do everything.
Right.
So let's say you can get people to watch your training ad, or you run an ad to get people to go and watch this training. I recorded it, put it on my website. If you want to watch the training, and so I created a small ad and I'm going to run this.
Right.
Let's say I can get people to watch the training at a rate of $4 a person. So like I'm paying to put my message out there. I'm putting it on Facebook, paying to advertise. And I'm putting this message out there and people are looking at it going, hey, yeah, I would be interested in watching that training. So they put their name and email in, they watch the training. Let's say I can do that. And if you know how to do ads well, you should be able to hit that $4 to $5 range. So let's say you're doing that. And let's say even if it's $5. So I get 100 people, over the course of a few days, I get 100 people to watch my training. So now I've spent $500 in ads for those 100 people. And if you have a really good training, you should probably be able to get 2% of those people to buy. If you did okay, you should be able to get 1% of the people to buy. So let's say you get 1%. So you spent $500 to get 100 people to watch your training, and one of them out of the 100 said yes. So now you have $1,000 in revenue. So you spent $500 to get $1,000 in course sales.
Yeah.
You just doubled your money.
Yeah. You just had a $500 profit.
Correct. So you turn $500 in advertising into $1,000 in revenue. And this is what I'm talking about, creating a system where you set it up, you create your training, you know how to put the training together, you know how to position yourself, you know how to lay it out correctly. And there's 100% right ways to do this and 100% wrong ways to do it. And the problem with most people is, I'll just put a training up, and the training is really bad.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to structure the training. They didn't know how to say the things in the right way, and people just don't buy.
Yeah. And right. A lot of people are, especially what we ran into, right? A lot of people are afraid to spend money on ads because they don't know what they're doing. And so then it's like, well, now it's just hoping that your organic audience is interested, and you just don't get the reach because of the way social media, Facebook, whoever, wherever your advertising does. And I don't want to go too deep in the weeds here, but I just want you to kind of share a little bit about that, because I think just giving people a scope of where do I start, right? Like, and to understand that, and that's honestly, that's why we create our Design, Launch, Grow program, was because a lot of people just don't know where to start or what those steps are, or where to find, the ideal audience, like you just mentioned, I mean, those are the how-tos that we help people work through with our course training and our coaching. So shifting gears here just to kind of move on here to another section of what you talk about in this is you talked a lot about having that vision, having a growth strategy, but there's a third component that's really important here for long-term sustainability, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be adaptable because times change, your customers' needs change, especially, we live in a world of a lot of technology. And suddenly, think about it this way: 15, 20 years ago, the only way to publish a book was to get a traditional publisher to take you on.
Right.
They'd be willing to, publish your book for you. Now people are self-publishing books like anything, like nothing. They're just kicking them out like they're pieces of candy.
Right.
And it's very easy. So the needs of the customer have changed.
Right.
The industry, the marketplace has changed. So you have to be able to understand this is going to happen to you as well. Is that today your customers' needs are this.
Right.
5 years from now, the needs are going to shift.
Right.
And you have to be able to shift with them. Because if you just keep offering the exact same thing, doing the exact same methods, but yet the customers are saying, well, I really don't need that anymore. I need this.
Right.
It may be generally the same need, but how we achieve the goal has changed.
Yeah.
I don't need to do that anymore. I need to do a different thing because all these things have changed. The technology is updated.
Yeah, I was gonna say the platforms change, everything.
Platforms change, yes. So you have to be adaptable to that. You have to be able to say, okay, I recognize that. Okay, let me show you how to do it in the new way. Let me show you what's the new approach to do it, because that's important. How do I, otherwise your clients are saying, yeah, this isn't helpful anymore.
Right.
And what that used to work 5 years ago, it doesn't work now. So and you're going to get more competition. Yeah. Like we see this too. If you build a business and you're like, you hit on something and people are like, whoa, this is amazing.
Right.
Everybody jumps on. Well, guess who else is noticing? Your other people are looking at it going, I could build a business like that.
Right.
Like, I could do something like that. I could compete with them. So all of a sudden you recognize you're not the only people in that space anymore. It's like you have competitors who are trying to undercut you or sell it cheaper or do it better than what you're doing, and offer a different solution. So you have to adapt and know and how to position yourself. No, we're doing it the right way. We're going to show you exactly what you need.
Yeah.
This is what you need to know, and you need to stick with us.
Yeah. Well, that's a challenge, right? I mean, because that means that you can't just rest on your laurels. You can't just sit there and say, well, I've been successful, I've created success and I can just keep doing this in perpetuity, because it just doesn't work that way. Like we really have to be paying attention to the market. We really have to be paying attention to, what other options are out there. That's one of the things I think, even David, I've heard you share many times, just from a marketing standpoint, is what other options are available to this person, including free YouTube videos or free this or free that, right? Like there in any realm, there's all sorts of options that people can find. I was actually talking to a radio ad executive this week, and he was talking about how he had his own business for quite a while, and then he got into the radio market. And he was saying how, when he goes, if you ask people how they found you, their first answer is, well, I Googled you. And he's like, yeah, but he's like, and that's probably true, but he's like, why did they Google you? It was many, and he's like, that's why he said, when people think that like their radio ads don't work, it's not because it's because rather that people don't say, well, I heard you on the radio. Well, you're right, but did you hear something on the radio that triggered you to go search on Google? That he said, those are the types of questions you have to ask to assess, are my ad dollars working? Right. And I think, radio is an option. Online ads are an option. It depends on your market, depends on your business, right? But it was very interesting to hear him say that, because in essence, we're kind of lazy, like in our thinking. Like when somebody says, how did you hear about us? Well, Google's an easy answer, because I looked you up today on Google, but why did I look you up? Where did I even hear about you to even search for you?
Right.
So anyway, that's, once again, that's just an adaptable thing, right? Like we have to be mindful that there's all sorts of ways to innovate and to grow and to modify our businesses and to take it to a new level, because a lot of businesses that fail, not just in the short term, but the long term, are those who got lazy and said, it's almost like their success became their downfall,
Yeah.
right? Like they assumed that because I've been successful in the past and up till now, that I can just keep doing what I'm doing and never change.
Well, that, yeah. And, there's always going to be new opportunities that come along too. And, you think, well, we got to this level. And now all of a sudden, if we just do these things, we could just blow this thing up and it'll be crazy successful. Well,
Yep.
maybe. And there's always somebody coming along promising you, because here's the thing that you learn once you create a successful business, once you have some, you kind of get your name out there and people are looking at you going, wow, you guys have really kind of got it going on. Guess what happens? You start attracting sharks.
You have a target on your back, don't you?
Yes. Well, and you start attracting sharks from other niches.
Oh,
hey,
right.
I can do this for you. Yeah. What's my fee? Oh, 100 grand. Like, okay. Like the risks to take on these things are starting to become a lot bigger. And these people, these sharks, recognize that you got cash flow. I'm going to take it. I want a piece of it.
Right.
And I'm going to sell you my service, and I'm going to blow your business up, and I'm going to do this. And the vast majority of them are full of it and can't deliver on the things that they want. But boy, they can sure bill you and charge you an arm and a leg for what they're doing. And it just, that's why you have to maintain financial discipline. I mean, we talked about that last week about having a financial plan to succeed in your business and being able to go through that, because you have to have discipline. You have to have the ability to say, no, we cannot just go and shoot a big wad of money at this thing.
Right.
That's going to take up all of our free cash flow. It's going to put us at risk. And the promise of, the massive success on the other side may or may not be true.
Right.
If it's not true, what's going to happen to our business?
Yeah.
And I'm just going to blow a whole bunch of money down a toilet and end up with nothing. And it happens. So you have to keep in your mind what made us successful up to this point.
Yeah.
Is it still working? And do I need to do everything, throw everything out the window and start over with a whole new idea? Or should I just modify what I'm doing and keep doing that? Because that's a proven model that works. So you have to maintain that discipline.
Yeah.
You have to know and understand and know how to interpret that chasing every shining opportunity that's out there sometimes is the worst thing that you can do.
Yeah.
And just turns into a waste of time and money.
Yeah. A friend of mine owns a brick and mortar business, and he has been very successful with it, growing it for the last 15 years. And he had a consulting company come in probably 2 or 3 years ago, and they were going to help him with all his, assessing his finances and do this, that, and the other. And basically he paid, let's say it was $50,000 for a year. He paid them to basically for them to say, you're doing a really good job. And it was like, he's like, he was looking for some new insights. He was looking for some new things, but because he didn't even realize, in some ways it was affirming. And I tried to tell him, like, hey, you got confirmation that what you're doing is working and it's good. So that,
but
that
did you really need to spend 50 grand to do that?
But that's what he's like. He's like, but now what's happened, right? He's gun shy. He's very unwilling to invest in other consultants or help a lot of times because of that experience. And so that's the kind of thing that happens, right? We get jaded along the way when we get burned, or we feel like we, maybe wasted money.
That kind of thing, unfortunately, happens far more than you realize. Is that these companies or these individuals come in and say, oh no, we can do all this for you. We're going to give you great insights, or we're going to give you that, we're going to take you to this whole new level. We're going to do all this. And it is like 50 grand, 100 grand. It starts to become very common to see those types of invoices for, once you hit a certain level of success, you start attracting these people in there. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're sitting there going, that was 50 grand.
Yeah.
That I could have kept for myself, or I could have
reinvested in the business
and kept growing it and doing things. And instead I just gave them 50 grand and they said, attaboy, you're doing a good job. Patted me on the back. Like, no.
Yeah.
And that is exactly, that happens. I wish I could say that what happened to your friend is a rare thing. It's way more common than you think.
Yeah.
People spending large sums of money on the promise of something big.
Yeah.
And at the end, all they get is a bill.
Yeah.
and nothing else really changes. And it's something that you have to really maintain. You have to have that healthy skepticism. Like you said, you can't become jaded where you ignore every opportunity, but you also have to have some healthy skepticism where you look at it and you have your sense
Verify.
of, you're just kind of help maintaining that. Is this really going to work? And you have to really maintain a sense of almost detachment from it and say, what do I really think?
Yeah.
Take the, because you get emotional about it. You're like, this could be amazing for my business. So you get so excited and you're like, you have to pull that back and just look at it objectively and try and say, is this really going to work? Does this really make sense?
Yeah. Well, folks, we hope this has been helpful to you, because really, to your point, David, this is where success and failure is kind of the line of delineation, right? Like, you can get started. There's a lot of people who start. The question is, are you setting yourself up to finish well and to continue? I heard Alex Hormozy, one time he said, if you look at business as a game, he's like, the goal is really to stay in the game. He's like, it's not, he goes, a lot of people think about winning the game. He's like, but he goes, really in business, it's about staying in the game. Unless you're thinking, I'm going to build something, sell it, and the game is over for you, that's fine. But he's like, if for those of us who, many of us in business that want to really help people, you have to do the things to stay in the game. And that's where I think a lot of this planning and foresight, the strategizing, and that's, once again, I've shared with you, I've shared on this podcast, like, this is probably one of the biggest growth areas that I continue to have to navigate myself, is being a strategic thinker, not just a busy doer. Right. And I think a lot of coaches, course creators, trainers, solopreneurs in general, we get passionate about what we do. We get passionate about the people we want to serve. And that's a key part of this. That why is very big there. And that purpose is big. But we can't do the purpose long term if we're not being strategic and thoughtful about the planning side of this. And so that's why we wanted to bring that to you today, folks. Hey, we, in our Design Launch Grow program, some of the stuff David was talking about specifically, I mean, we literally have training videos on where do you find the right people? What is the kind of opportunity you invite them to whether it's a training, an ebook, a lead generator of some kind to check you out and learn. We walk you through these types of things, how to then go from getting started to scaling your business. That's what we do. That's why we do our Design Launch Grow program. So check out designlaunchgrow.com if you need that kind of help, because we are passionate about helping coaches, course creators, trainers truly reach and serve their ideal clients to help them in the ways that they're uniquely gifted to do. So check that out, designlaunchgrow.com. Otherwise, we will see you next time. Have a great day.